Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 65 of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is September 7th, 2020. I'm Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my stealthy co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
Boo.
Boo?
You said stealthy. So
What did I do to
boo.
upset you? I feel I deserve praise for that.
I know. I'm just copying my 5-year-old. He's sneaky.
She
and then
booed
he jumps
me.
out and says, boo. Boo.
Before we get started, we do want to remind our listeners that the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is not a spoiler-free podcast. That means if there is something in the Cosmere you haven't read and are worried about hearing spoilers, you might want to go read those first, then come back and join the discussion. But don't do it yet, because we've got an awesome announcement coming up very shortly, so hold off, and then after we make the announcement, that's when you'll want to take off for a little while. Now, the not spoiler-free fact is also particularly true tonight because we are going to be discussing chapters from the as yet unpublished Rhythm of War, which will be releasing early on Tor.com leading up to its release on November 17th. Tonight it's going to be chapters 4 and 5. For those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we do want to remind you, you can actually join during the recording and interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We record every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, take an active part of the discussion. There's a great chat going on right now, and we just would love to have you join us. Now, it is time for the previously alluded to huge announcement. The Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is excited to announce that in 4 weeks, on October 5th, we are going to be joined by a special visitor on the podcast. Isaac Stewart, the creative director at Dragonsteel Entertainment, will be a guest on the show. We're going to be talking to him about the Cosmere, his work creating art and coordinating design for Brandon's books, and even a little bit about some of his own personal projects. Guys, I'm freaking excited about this.
As well we should be, because this is awesome.
Yeah, yes. I just decided to take a shot. I reached out to him, and he responded. He was like, "Yeah, I'd love to be on there." And we've just been, I've been texting back and forth with Isaac Stewart. No big.
Yeah, just no big deal. The question is, Bill, does this rank lower or higher than the time that I got you in contact with the band Smash Mouth?
I am the one who got in contact myself.
I got you
in
to
your
get
name.
in contact. Yeah, sorry, I said that backwards.
I'd put this above that.
Probably correct. The same
now,
time.
One thing to keep in mind, we're going to be asking a lot of questions, and of course, if you have questions you'd like us to ask him while he's on the show, please send them in a short email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and please include the word Isaac in the subject line, just to make it easier for me to find and organize everything. No promises on what questions he will and will not answer. And we're really not going to try and pry spoilers out of him. Any that he's willing to let drop, of course, we will not complain. But, we want to have a good conversation with him and not get him in trouble with.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the other things to be aware of is he is releasing a book of his own here pretty soon. When is that?
I'm sure
he'll talk about it. The Kickstarter of that is actually dropping right around the time of the episode.
Yeah. What was the book again? I'm trying to remember.
It's called Monsters Don't Wear Underpants.
That's right, yeah.
I knew it was something like that, but I didn't want to get it wrong because the order of that is really important to make it, stay family friendly.
Indeed. So, yeah, we're really excited about that. So make sure, again, that's going to be on October 5th. The episode will be releasing on October 7th. We'll be posting about it when it happens. So pay attention to social media, of course, and just be excited with us because we're excited. Now, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies is made possible by the support of our listeners and patrons. The show will, of course, continue to be free, but if you want to help us out, head on over to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. You can pledge $1 per episode even, and that'll help us out. Just every little bit helps. Patrons do get immediate access to our Discord channel, which is basically a much bigger and cooler version of the chat during our live streams, because we've got awesome people in there talking about the Cosmere, talking about a little bit of everything, to be honest. So, and of course you will also, and of course you'll also get access to bonus episodes. You'll get exclusive access to other bonus content, all sorts of goodies. This week we want to give a special shout out to a new patron, Brian H. Thanks so much for patronizing. Is that for being a patron?
Patronage.
Patreonification, I think, is the proper term.
I
have an English degrey.
No, you have an Engle talking degree. You've been very.
I do have an Engle talking degree. No, I have an English degree. I specialized in Engle talking.
Engle talking, that's a specialty. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Okay, so are we ready to dive into these next chapters?
No, but let's do it anyway.
You were waiting to say that, weren't you?
Not really, no.
Oh, well then, good for you. Okay, so like we said, so now, guys, this is spoiler time. So if you don't want to be spoiled on Rhythm of War, now is the time to stop. Feel free to come back after November 17th to read these to listen to these, because clearly it's going to be fascinating.
And then you can binge read or listen to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope you're not binge reading, because then I have questions about who's been transcribing, because I didn't agree to that.
Oh, man.
So, first things first, let's talk about the epigrams first, because I love the epigrams. So, Amy, do you want to give us a read of this one? Do your best Navani impression.
I will try. To draw Stormlight out of a gemstone, I use the Arnest method. Several large, empty gemstones are brought close to the infused one while the Spren is inspecting it. Stormlight is slowly absorbed from a small gemstone by a very large gemstone of the same type, and several together can draw the light out quickly. The method's limitation is, of course, the fact that you need not merely acquire one gemstone for your fabrial, but several larger ones to withdraw the Stormlight.
Keep going.
Oh, both? Oh,
That's
sorry.
the same.
There's 2 parts to it. Other methods must exist, as proven by the extremely large gemstone fabrials created by the Britzel Guild out of Thalana. If Her Majesty would please repeat my request to the Guild, this secret is of vital importance to the war effort. Lecture on Fabrial Mechanics presented by Navani Kolin to the Coalition of Monarchs, Urithiru, Jesavin, 1175.
So, this just rings every single geek button. It's just like, I want the science of fabrials. So, Jordan, you're our resident physicist. Why don't you...
Well, first of all, I think the Pretzel Guild needs to stop withholding their secrets. This is a war.
It's pronounced Vristel, and it's basically the opposite of our college friend, the overvoweled one. Because it's the overconsonanted one.
Definitely. There's only one consonant in that entire... vowel.
6. One of 6. Letters,
vowel in that entire word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Couldn't say it right.
Vristel.
I don't know, but it's definitely at least the Pretzel Guild for now. Anyway, it's very interesting. First of all, I love that she has. They talk about methods and stuff like this, because this is the basis of any form of engineering. There's all sorts of methods and procedures that they follow to do things, and certain people do things different ways. And so it's one of these things. It's a small thing that adds context. Now, the question is, does he actually have what's the Arnest method versus the Pretzel method, or whatever it's going to be called? And I'd be willing to bet Brandon probably doesn't really have like all these different methods, but by dropping them, it makes it feel like he does at the very minimum, and thus makes the world feel more full.
Yeah, they've talked about that in writing excuses about world building and stuff, and if you put enough flavor and get specific enough, people go, well, they've got that figured out. Obviously, they have the whole rest of it.
Yep.
But then the other thing I love about it is I love how, well, I mean, it sort of goes into it in the next epilogue as well. Or not epilogue, epigram. Just how there is not a 100% one-to-one to physical phenomena, but it's similar. But it actually makes a ton of sense. Things like electricity versus fluid dynamics, if you study out the formulas, they actually behave almost exactly the same, except one's dealing with fluids and one's dealing with electrons, but they move so similarly that the formulas have a lot of one-to-one to them, and we can actually display, like, it's one of the things that we do to display how electricity behaves to some of our first-year students when I was a TA, so that they could understand the concept. And so I love that he's doing it in this world as well, saying, oh, it's like this is in the next one, it's like a pressure differential. Should I probably just read that one right now?
Read what?
The other epigram.
Oh, well, actually, I just want to address that chat is having discussions about the ethics of capturing lesser spren, and this is why I love our chat.
Oh man, yes. But Cheyenne said they're good comments in there. Sorry. Continue.
Keep going, Jordan.
If the stormlight in a gemstone is withdrawn quickly enough, a nearby spren can be sucked into the gemstone. This is caused by a similar effect to a pressure differential, created by a sudden withdrawal of stormlight, though the science of the two phenomena are not identical. You will be left with a captured spren to be manipulated as you see fit.
So, yeah, for some reason, the image of this is very cartoonish to me, because just imagining a spren being sucked into a gemstone, But yeah, it's
I believe the scientific term is schlorped into the gemstone.
But yeah. All of these sounds seem lickable.
All these sounds seem what?
Lickable. No, she said lickable. I heard it.
All
these sounds are lickable.
I think I lost the and so it was plickable.
All these sounds seem lickable. Well, that's what's the what's the word for that where you can like taste colors and
synesthesia.
Synesthesia, yes.
There you go.
All the sounds are lickable. That might be a new title. I was thinking Pretzel Guild, but I'm debating between that and the title.
We're not even 20 minutes in and we have two potential titles.
I love it.
Oh man.
Guys, I love this show. I love being on this show with y'all. Anyway, okay, so Shallan. So instead of going by chapters, I kind of have divided the discussion into what's going on with Shallan and then what's going on with Kaladin.
It makes sense because they go back and forth between them.
They're in different parts of the world, and it bounces back and forth between those two stories. So I figured, hey. So let's start with Shallan. So Shallan has been captured. Dun, 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 dun.
Yes.
But of course, this is exactly what she wanted. So we're all good here.
She wakes up earlier than they're expecting because she heals herself. But
yeah, because her body naturally starts using stormlight, and it's interesting. And Radiant wakes up as the one in control. It's so interesting how she kind of has started sliding in and out of these personas almost. Just
the transition is really fluid, and
it's almost the same way that Kaladin fights as a windrunner in the air. She has this whole choreographed thing going on inside of her own mind.
Well,
yeah,
it's fascinating.
It's a party.
The thing, what it actually more reminds me of is more like I know Bill's played it. Someone might know it. The game Trine, where it's three people inhabiting sort of one body, and they take over to solve different puzzles. And so it's a puzzle platform solver because there's a committee thing going on in their head. It's
like the Lost Vikings, but only one of them.
Yeah. And so they're just sitting here and they're deciding things by committee, like Radiant being like, oh, we shouldn't do this. But the other two are like, yeah, we shouldn't. So she doesn't bring it up because it'll just start an argument and she'll be outvoted. And you're just like, oh, good. I love that we have the tricameral system inside a person.
Yeah.
And just the fact that they argue, it actually reminds me a little bit of Legion.
That's what I was going to say, Stephen Leeds,
it's something that Brandon's done before with Stephen Leeds. Jordan, have you read Legion yet?
I read the first one.
Okay.
I haven't completed it yet.
I need to finish them still too.
But it's really interesting seeing these different aspects arguing within her and it making a kind of sense.
The problem is she's reached sort of a homeostatic balance, but it just doesn't seem like it'll take much to upset this balance.
It's like the episode where of The Simpsons where Mr. Burns gets everything. And he's like, that means I'm invincible. And the doctor's like, oh no, even a slight breeze could invincible.
The Three Stooges effect.
Exactly.
All the diseases can't get in because they're fighting to try and take over.
Oh, man.
So I love some of the observations that Shallan makes to herself. She's like, she found herself wondering about the tailor who they went to get these robes made. Yes, we want 20 identical mysterious robes sewn with our ancient arcane symbols. They're for parties.
Parties. Yeah, I was like, oh man.
The thing that this reminds me of, there was a DC Comics like short series of comic books. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I want to say it was like The Constructors. And it was just about the people whose job it is like to make all these evil layers for all the various villains. And so there are these blue-collar workers, but they have this incredibly hazardous job because you're setting all these traps up for the Riddler. And you got to find all these abandoned amusement parks for the Joker.
It's like the show Powerless.
Yeah.
It lasted one season, but they were basically running the DC, R&D teams.
Oh, man.
Powerless did not get enough play.
No, it ended. Yeah, it got a rough break. But yeah, so just I do like that Chad is now comparing Shallan and Wayne, and that actually is a conversation I would love to see happen. But I feel like Wayne would win because Shallan would get confused. But he has more hats than she has personalities, so yeah, exactly. He wins.
Yeah, but I mean, he also he takes time to do his beforehand versus she's just got like her 3 established ones.
Sometimes he does. Like sometimes he just picks up a hat, puts it on, and he's like, "All right, here's where we are," because he's done a lot of research beforehand, and so we can kind of
true. Yeah,
form them.
Well, he's older than her too.
Yeah,
which helps.
Okay, so one sentence that came up during this scene stood out to me. Said, forcing herself to stay in character, Vale gazed up with wonder and confusion, then shied back against the chasm wall, startling a Kremling with dark purple colorings. Strange-looking Kremling. We know that strange-looking Kremlings are important, and there's a very good chance that they are one of the sleepless, or part of one of the sleepless.
Yeah.
I still find it so interesting that there's an entire race of people that are basically Oogie Boogie from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
I know. Oogie Boogie Man. Sorry.
But yeah.
No, go on. Continue.
No, I don't remember a lot of the words. It's been a while since I've watched it. My son loves it. My daughter hates it, so I don't get to watch it very often. Anyway.
Okay, so anyway, Shallan has been... she's woken up and there's all these cultists around her. She looks around and she realizes that Eli, the one she's trying to catch, isn't there.
Which means she was not important enough, which disappoints her. Or it's Vale. It disappoints Vale that she didn't manage to do it.
And I do find it interesting that apparently the Sons of Honor are claiming responsibility for things that we know they had nothing to do with, such as the return of the Everstorm.
Always claim it. Always claim it.
Well, I mean, you never know. They may have done something right beforehand, and then it happened, and they're like, "Oh, look, we did it."
I guess indirectly they can claim some sort of responsibility.
That's more how I sort of think they think of it. Is they actually think of it as, well, we got the singers to go to war with us, so
we started this. Good job.
We claim it. Basically, they're the worst middle manager you've ever had in whatever workplace ever. Try and take credit for everything.
Man.
It's interesting, though, because in this book, it feels like the Sons of Honor are kind of being like they've kind of gotten that villain decay aspect as stories go on, because in the first 3 books they seemed absolutely terrifying, and at this they're almost played for comic relief.
I know. It seems kind of sad for them.
Yeah.
Except Amaranth was part of them, so I'm like, no, that's all right. You can die.
To the point where, according to Mraize, Gavilar had actually joined the group but had been kind of using them for his own means. I'm just like, wow, that's... I don't know. Like, suddenly they feel less threatening.
3 things. First of all, Mraize saying anything, I think, should be taken with a grain of salt.
I don't think Mraize directly lies to Shallan. There's definitely stuff that he leaves out.
Yes, he may.
But
let
I don't
her
think that he flat out lies to her.
But it's just one of those. I take it with a grain of salt if he says anything, because
That's very fair.
We don't know what his motivations are. Second of all, I just love the way Shallan talks about them. It makes him sound like Shallan thinks of them the same way we think about LARPers sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's true.
So,
to be fair, I don't want to make fun of any.
No,
LARPers are totally cool. I
Yeah.
can't make myself take that next step to go to that level.
LARPing's fine when you understand what you're doing. That you understand you're LARPing.
It's the ones who take themselves a little bit too seriously.
Yeah, and that's how Shallan sort of views them. And the third thing, I love that Shallan is now practical enough that she's thinking about the mechanics of these small details. Like, they would need a tailor for this. This is a problem.
They would need someone to do 20 identical ones, and it's like, that's a lot of embroidery.
And this is where I always, in my head, like to think Brandon doesn't know where they get their tailor either, but as long as Shallan winks and nods hard enough, we're okay with it.
I'd like to imagine they have one member who is able to sew, and they just did that every night for like weeks and weeks.
Now, the other thing is, it's fair that Shallan probably doesn't think as highly of them as a lot of people, because she's kind of been playing them like a fiddle for a while. When they pull out the Fabrial.
Oh, yes, I love that.
To dispel her light weaving, she's just sort of chuckling to herself. She's like, nice.
Doesn't she call them like you sweet breeze or something like that?
Oh, you sweet breeze. Yeah.
You sweet soft breeze. That's
soft breeze. That's what it was.
That's when they say, oh, see, she couldn't have sworn an oath if she was a radiant.
She swore the oath, and so she's totally fine. She's like, oh, honey, no.
Oh, you sweet soft breeze.
What was I gonna say? Oh,
now
so
the other thing.
One thought I did have real quick is we mentioned that Gavilar joined the group to use them, and I think Gavilar used like everybody though.
Oh yeah.
So
Gavilar was all about Gavilar.
Yeah, making that jump is not a huge one for that.
Gavilar was kind of a textbook narcissist. It feels like.
Yeah, he was totally a narcissist. But anyway, we may resume. Yes.
Now, the other thing, though, is when we're speaking of being kind of patronizing, Vale and Radiant apparently see Shallan as this it's like they needed to allow her to spend some time with Adolin, or she'd positively wilt the poor thing. It's just like, I mean, it's one thing being treated like a child by your older siblings and stuff, but by yourself.
At the same time, I've been around my sisters right after they got married, so it's more just like she's in the honeymoon phase, and she's not getting to honeymoon. She's busy.
Yeah, she's very busy doing spy work. That's rough.
Yeah. So, any thoughts about who the Sons of Honor's spy might be, or maybe just somebody that we've never?
I don't know. When they said that, I was like, oh no.
I think it's Shallan.
I don't know.
I think Mraize is playing both sides against each other.
That would be funny, though, if was the case.
Fair.
I don't know. That's just,
I could see him doing that, but I don't know. I'm worried it's more sinister than there's somebody else we need to worry about, but I don't know.
Well, but to me, that sounds like the perfect red herring Brandon might throw in to where they're constantly trying to figure out who's the spy all along, and then you find out, no, it's Mraize playing everyone like a fiddle.
I'll be mad if it's any of the Thaylen royalty.
Oh,
I had a fleeting thought that it was not the current, like the adult prince, but the son.
Okay.
If not Shallan, my guess would be one of the Ardents
who doesn't like the radiance and stuff.
Yeah.
I could see that,
Perhaps.
but then there's also the problem of the Sons of Honor. They're trying to bring back things that I don't see the
Blackthorn United
Ardents
says
being very cool with either.
Blackthorn United says Taravangi, and I'm just like, no, that's too many twists.
Oh no, he's But one other random thing, when they pull out the Fabrial, the fake one that she did, I loved that she's like, I thought it was going to be too over the top, but no, that worked better for them because it was too over the top.
Well, it's because she charged so much.
And then she charged
twice
them
as
even,
much.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, it made him want it even more since I charged more, and so yeah, but I did.
Yeah, the other thing is they're just talking about the cost of it. Trying to remember who it was. It was one of these self-help books I was listening to, and this guy talked about how he had set up this consulting business and just wasn't doing well, and he was hating it because he was constantly dealing with these low-level customers who were nickel and diming him, and so he finally decided to just jack up his prices, like quadrupled them, just because he's like, I'm tired of doing this, so if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to jack up the prices and so I'll only be doing it. And suddenly he started getting more customers and better customers at the same time because he was only getting people who are like, well, he's charging this much, he must be good, I want to listen to him because I'm paying so much.
Yeah,
I think that's what they're like.
Yeah, I'm still not super experienced doing commissions and stuff like that, but it's really hard to not overprice yourself, but then you also have to balance out and not undercharge either. You got to find that balance of, I have to value my time, and if you charge more, then the more people who know quality work, as long as you have quality work, will see the price and go, oh, they know what they're doing. And go
Today on Business Chat with SICS.
Sorry.
No worries.
I go on tangents.
No, but the other thing that it could be, I see this all as a lot of, there's plans upon plans and people stacking things. It could also be someone who's working for Yesna, who's because Yesna has a vested interest in the Sons of Honor as well. She's the one who, her father was part of them. The guy he kept trying to hook her up with was part of them. I could see her having her own spy thing going on, and the problem could be a lot of, the problem that the original Radiance ran into was there was a lot of bickering, a lot of fighting, a lot of not trusting each other, and the Altschallers are very individualistic and have trouble playing well with others.
But
I could see her maybe not properly coordinating.
I'm almost wondering if that she did have that going, that it would be a double agent and they would know that they were actually working for Yasna. But
yeah, that's what my thing is.
Okay.
No. This is Roshar, so everything comes in tins. So they're actually not a double agent. They're like a dectillion.
Oh, that's a big word.
Dectuple agent.
Who do they all work for in the end? Stick.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Okay, gotta breathe.
And then, of course, Shallan, she's like, the meeting's about to end and she hasn't gotten what she needs. And so she just sort of throws out this Hail Mary pass. I'm not who you think I am. She doesn't have a plan behind it. She just knows this isn't going to get him to stop and say, what?
And I love that she does it because she doesn't want to have to keep being the simple tradeswoman and just keep that up, because they're about to just send her off and not do any more with her, and she needs to see Eli.
Well, it would take time, and time is a problem.
And she doesn't want to do that, and she wants to see Adolin and all these other things. And
I love how seat of her pants she's doing this whole thing, because she's just like, I'm just throwing stuff against the wall trying to keep the meeting going on as long as possible.
And I love, there's a line about that Veil and Radiant, when it's like, when we have to do something really fast thinking, we give it to Shallan, if we need to be quick on our feet that way.
Well, to be fair, this is when Shallan has tended to shine. because she did that when she infiltrated what's her bucket's caravan. She ended up killing
I
Tin.
can't remember her name. Tin, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so she did that to Tin's camp. That's how she was able to get into Yesna's retinue originally.
Yeah.
And it's when she's sort of making it up as she goes that she tends to do better.
Yeah. She has to pause and be able to connect the dots properly after everything, but when she has to be quick on her feet, she's very good.
She does well.
Well, it's because it plays to her strengths, because even Shallan talks about it. She's not smart. She's more clever than she's smart. She's still fairly smart. Like, she's very well studied, but she is more clever than she's smart.
Yep.
She's very quick-witted.
I also like what she does when, she's like, I've been copying schematics, and she light weaves it onto the page. And it's just like, okay, that's clever. Because she has drawn it before, and so she can light weave it. And she just sort of puts it on, and she spins some story about it being invisible ink, or she pressed down hard on it when she copied, and so she kind of does a rubbing to create it. But I just thought it was really, really clever. And of course they get upset. There's like, you're selling, military secrets. That's treason. She's like, you are literally plotting to overthrow the king or the queen. Like, that is why we're here right now, and you talk about treason.
It's my favorite thing. I can't remember where it's from. It's just like, it's only treason if the coup fails.
That sounds like Garrick. That sounds like a Deep Space Nine Garrick
That might
quote.
be Garrick.
Oh, man. That's good. I'll have to remember that one.
No, because if the coup passes, then you're a freedom fighter.
Yeah.
And I love that, again, she's thinking to herself as she just sort of rolls her eyes, these people. And then, of course, Aelin rushes in like, some white knight hero. Dun, 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 dun.
Where does he get off thinking that he's some sort of knight in shining armor? Wait.
He does have
He literally has shining armor.
Oh, dang it.
He's not a knight, though. He's one of the only ones who's not a knight.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so... And of course, Brandon cuts off because he knows when to end a chapter.
Yep.
So, meanwhile, back at the ranch, Kaladin...
back at the fourth bridge.
Back in Hearthstone. What is Hearthstone? Anyway.
Hearth.
It's where they keep all the horses.
Brandon's like, all right, time to have our big battle scene. We've been building up the Windrunners for so long. Let's send a fleet of them out.
And a fleet is the proper word for what they're doing nowadays.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Fleet is also the name of, a character who who raced the wind, raced the storm.
That's true, yes.
So, first off, Colin says they'd learned much about the Fused from the Herald Ash. So apparently they're just chatting now with Ash, and she's a Herald, and this is normal, business as usual. After a year in, it's one of those things like, what happened during this year? Like, there's so much. They find out Ash is a Herald. Yasna is interviewing them. And I'm just like, I want to see that scene. I want to see Yasna and Ash in the same room having a conversation, because those are two very, very strong personalities.
And that first chat would have been very interesting.
Uh-huh.
So, you're a Herald, huh?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Particularly since Ash has been going around destroying depictions of herself as a Herald, so... And then, so they've learned all sorts of things. One of them apparently is how the Fused work. The Heavenly Ones in particular. Because, and I like the line, he says, like they hadn't merely claimed the sky, but instead were born to it. I'm just immediately thinking Bane. Just like, you think the darkness is your ally.
You think the skies are your ally.
But yeah, it's... Oh, man. Oh, and Cheyenne in chat mentions it'd be nice to have Chris in on that conversation as well, because she's like hiding behind the corner and just taking notes furiously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
And there's definitely a lot of holy crap, a lot has happened.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And Brandon is kind of leaning into the fact that this is a year skip. Oh, by the way, some things have happened. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to show you, but just buckle up because there's some things that might rattle you a bit.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things that's interesting is the fact that Kaladin's be like, everyone below CP4 go down there. And
Yeah,
it's
so
like,
they're super organized.
yeah. And
Oh, yeah.
it makes perfect sense, especially for the Windrunners who, literally have formed out of a
Military.
not platoon, not some
A squad.
yeah, an actual military,
Oh, yeah.
a group of the military. Like they were an actual division of soldiers, and so it's spread throughout their entire order.
Well, soldiers. At first they were just slaves,
Yeah.
and they were.
But even
and I mean, and-
still, Kaladin
To
molded
the
them
point
into
where
a unit.
to the point where when Kaladin, first started trying to behave as a soldier, everybody just sort of looked at him and laughed. And so, he really has built this thing from the ground up.
Well, and what's interesting is now that they're running out of wind or honor
Honor
sprint.
sprint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have one, but it doesn't have somebody yet.
Yeah, we don't know.
What's up with that?
Yeah, because he has the whole line. It's like one problem at a time. And you're just like, what? What's the problem?
What? I need
And
to
so
know.
we're kind of seeing in full effect the what's it called? Not harm. Oh gosh, what's it called when the two different types of magic converge and it makes a third?
Harmonic convergence?
Is-
Harmonic.
Is it harmonic? No,
Pretty
it's
sure.
not harmonic. What's the word? Anyway,
I don't know.
we're seeing that, firsthand because there are now 300 Windrunner runners, and only 50 of those are full knights, and theirs is specifically the fact that Windrunners have more squires.
Yeah.
Chat, can you look up what that word is? I'm having trouble.
I'm already looking it up.
Okay.
Resonance.
Resonance. That's the one.
Oh, yeah.
But that basically means, I believe that means that they've spoken the third oath, right? That they have shard blades?
yeah.
yeah.
Or does it just mean that they've bonded to sprint?
No,
Does that happen?
third one is the honor blade.
Right, but when it says, yeah, and they talk about having shard weapons, so yeah, it's probably third.
Yeah.
And the rest haven't. Almost all of the original Bridge 4 members have bonded to Sprin, as have the second wave of recruits, which are basically the ones that joined after Bridge 4 became the honor guard for Dalinar. And then even some who joined right after they moved to Urithiru. So, they're growing. People are seeing these guys flying around and saying, hey, I want to be part of that. I think the first one we actually see that with is Lynn just sort of, actively saying, hey, I want to be part of this.
She's the perspective you get trying to join.
Still one of my favorite scenes after he's talking to Sigil about, maybe you shouldn't, should do things from their perspective. Then Kaladin immediately inserts his foot into his mouth with Lynn. Then Sigil's like, maybe you should learn to talk about people from, think about their perspective. Shut it, Sigil.
Oh, and Kaladin and Lynn are not in a happy place. Like Kaladin is just not in a good place right now.
No.
And he's lashing out to everybody. He even realizes that he and Lynn
Understatement of
wouldn't have
the
worked
year.
out.
Kaladin's never in a good place.
He's in a worse place than normal, though.
Yeah.
He's not at the point of throwing himself off of the honor chasm, but he's still in a dark
Not
spot.
great, yeah.
To the point where Syl is scared for him.
Well, and apparently everyone is scared for him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
and that's
all
the thing.
aware
People
of-
keep checking in. And, Lynn, and he accuses Syl of, telling them. And she's like, this is what it's like when I haven't told them anything. No. It'd be worse if I said anything about your dreams and everything that's going on there.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see the way that the Windrunners and the Heavenly Ones, the fused, interact. Because there's a very interesting sense of honor between the two.
yeah.
The fact that they
like
want to
they're-
duel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go one-on-one. They don't team up against people.
And it's kind of a sort of unspoken agreement. They
And
hold out spears to each other. They challenge each individual, go off, have their fight. And, both sides respect it.
I imagine in their earlier fights they didn't do that, but
Well,
I don't know.
We did see that, because at Thalen Field, Kaladin was fighting like 5-on-1.
Yeah.
Right. To be fair, at that point, Kaladin was the only knight until
a
couple of them started coming through the portal. But
and they were pretty desperate to not let Kaladin and company win too. So.
But it's really interesting seeing kind of the relationship that's developed between Kaladin and Leshwi. Because you see an actual respect. Now, Leshwi is the one who has been working with Moash.
Yeah.
But she's just... It's very, very interesting seeing the way the interplay between the two. I like that Brandon has avoided going the black and white, everyone on the other side is bad. Like, it's very interesting seeing both sides of this sort of conflict. It's really well done, I think.
It also makes a lot of sense, given that we see a huge difference between the various orders of Knights Radiant and their temperaments. It would make sense that there's a very different temperament to the various orders of the Fused.
Absolutely.
Because it's very clear that Nightcrawler dude does not care about fighting honorably.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. He's just like, I'm going to pop in. Very, very pragmatic.
Yeah, he's like Nightcrawler and
jerky.
The Rock. Anyway.
But yeah. Another thing that happens during this combat is, Dalinar apparently just pops open perpendicularities at will now.
She just does that.
This was the climactic moment of Oathbringer, and now this is part of his power set. This is not, that was a special occasion. This is, cool, I learned a new trick.
You just popped out a perpendicularity like daisies.
But it's just sort of because Dalinar is just awesome. And it feels like this ability feels so overpowered.
And I mean, if it was anybody other than Dalinar having it, I think it would be even more overpowered. But it seems like he respects the ability, and so he doesn't abuse it, even though it's
because it drains him. It takes a toll on him. Mm-hmm. And just pulling together the three realms of reality.
It's hard.
It wears you out a little bit.
Yeah, just a little draining.
I wonder if the process is similar to... I remember in Secret History when Kaladin tries to take the power right as Preservation is about to be shattered. Mm-hmm. And the power's resisting him. And he's like, well, I've tugged on stubborn anchors before. And he has to sort of pull the power to himself. I'm wondering if bringing the realms together feels similar to when Kelsier was doing that.
Yeah. Apparently you're disappointing people in chat. I haven't followed the full conversation.
Did you say Kaladin instead of...
did I say Kaladin? Okay.
I think apparently you said Kaladin instead of Kelsier.
Oh, okay.
No, didn't you know Kaladin's in Secret History?
Yeah.
Totally there.
Come on, people.
That wouldn't rock anybody's world. No,
read between the lines.
Kaladin is not in Secret History. Kaladin wasn't born at the time of Secret History.
But it would be cool.
It would be awesome.
Be a lot more cool if you did.
Okay, so I like that they give us kind of a breakdown of the advantages and disadvantages between Windrunners and Heavenly Ones. Because it's a clear comparison, but Kaladin, of course, as both a surgeon and a soldier, he has a way of breaking down. What do I know? What can I learn from that? And so so the Windrunners have a speed advantage because they can lash themselves multiple times and essentially just hit incredible speeds.
Yeah.
They also have shard weapons. But the Heavenly Ones have been around for a long time.
Which helps a lot.
And they also don't drain Void Light when they fly. Now, Dalinar kind of cancels out this advantage himself when he rips open a portal to the other realms. But, it still is an interesting point that they apparently do not leak as they fly.
Mm-hmm.
They're also
which is a weird sentence.
There's a lot of... That's the weird sentence that stands out to you?
They don't leak as they fly.
They're also reborn with each Everstorm, so they can afford to be reckless. Cool. And then the other thing is their weapons. Now, their weapons are interesting because they're coated in some sort of material that blocks shard blades.
So we're assuming aluminum.
Possibly.
Aluminium.
And
do I look British to you?
And wounding a radiant with them will
tasty.
drain Stormlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's another.
Something.
Yeah,
it's doing something.
It sucks it right out of them. We don't know
why or
what. But. And of course, we mentioned earlier, everybody comes in and starts checking on Kaladin. Lopin does it in the Lopin-iest way. He's like, "Hey, you want a break? I'll go fight her. We got this."
Tag in.
But it's interesting also to watch, based on these advantages and stuff, how Kaladin starts to play with his abilities to develop some new tactics. This is something Brandon loves to do. And it's one of my favorite things that he does, because a lot of times in fantasy novels, people say, here's your ability. And people are like, oh, cool, I can throw a fireball. Brandon's like, okay, now what can I burn?
What can I
burn? How can I burn something different? How can I use this in a completely unintended way? Mm-hmm. It's not just I'm going to chuck a fireball at somebody. It's I'm going to, create a flaming arrow and burn down the entire, like all weird things. And
I mean, he's had a year and he's seen all the other Windrunners trying things out. So I'm sure they've toyed with different ideas and
right.
Yeah,
like apparently using lashings to create a harpoon gun.
Mm-hmm. I know.
But Brandon did this in Mistborn with steel pushing. First thing is they're called coin shots. But what if they could fly? Or, not fly, but jump really, really, really far.
So you're practically
jump good.
And I just love watching him play with these. So, for example, when Kaladin, rather than, because he can't throw Syl as a spear, because the farther she gets away from him, the dumber she gets, essentially, and they need to be connected for everything to work properly.
Yeah.
But he can lash a spear at them and basically turn himself into a trebuchet.
Yep.
Or not a trebuchet, ballista. Sorry, I'm getting my siege engines mixed up.
Either way, it hurts.
I mean, he could do either.
Yeah.
Trebuchet would be difficult with the way that works, but
the thing is, the people who have played Breath of the Wild, I now think of lashings as the time freeze effect, and when you start hitting it, and it has the arrow pointing in the one direction, the more you hit it to let you know how hard it's going to go flying. Sitting there, dunk, 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 dunk. Let's go. Pew!
But yeah, it's really, I love watching these battle sequences because it's when it feels like Brandon's got a sandbox to play in. He's built the sandbox himself, but this is when he's like, okay, now I've put all these pieces in place. Let's make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing he does a really good job with this battle in particular is how he highlights, because they're in a long drawn-out war, which isn't really something we've seen as much in Brandon's works. We've had the implications of it, but we've never had these specialized units facing off against each other, multiple times. Because usually in war, when one side wins, it's over. But we, for unique reasons, don't have that with these two groups. And each time they fight, they get a little more information about the other. And so there's sort of a game of information going on as well.
It's sort of like if the Cold War had fights.
Yeah.
Because, they keep trying to one-up each other. But in this, they actually are fighting. And so, each side is constantly upping their game.
And I think the reason they can actually be fighting and keep upping the way they are is because Stormlight heals them or Voidlight heals the fused. So, I mean, without that, they would be a huge attrition of soldiers on both sides.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the Windrunners are getting a lot of kills, but because they just come back.
They just get reborn. It's kind of irritating.
And that's why extra lives is the most annoying power for someone to have.
Well, and that's why it's interesting later on in the chapter when Kaladin, he has a kill. Like he could kill one of the fused, and he's just like, but they're basically out of the fight, and
So
they're
what's
just
the
going to be
point?
reborn. So he looks them in the eye. He just says, "Go." And it's interesting because the fuse then sort of flies off and waits outside, just sort of watching. It almost feels like the most intense game of tag I've ever seen in my life. He's just like, I'm out.
Just tag
so-
me back in when I'm better. Yeah.
It's really interesting. And then of course Syl, really, she's trying to taunt. She's like, because he flies off and one of them flies off and Syl says, "And don't you dare return, or we'll come up with a better insult than this one." Right? It's just like, oh, Syl.
Oh, you're cute.
But this is one of the positive instances where you can use "bless your heart" because
she needs to train with Lopin.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Lopin's got some better clips.
Oh no,
there.
that was Leshwi breaking off. Sorry, and it Kaladin and Syl have an interesting conversation right after that, where he's just like Cal is so down on himself. He says, "You could have caught her if you'd been flying on your own without me." And Syl looks at her. She's just like, "And what would I have done? Like, look at her mean?"
Glare at her? I need you
yeah.
for the stabby part.
Exactly. Which is very, very Brandon language. Like, if you ever listen to writing excuses, that's the kind of chatter that Brandon, Dan, and Howard and Mary have with each other. It's just like, it's time for the stabby thing. It's a very and that comes through in Brandon's writing a lot. It's kind of fun to read and recognize that.
As an aside, another thing that's interesting is the fact that Leshwi is clearly trying to get as much intel as she can on the fourth bridge as possible.
Well, of course.
And it leads to Kaladin talking about how even the heralds were marveling at the fourth bridge. And so they finally have made something that not even the ancient Artifabrians had achieved.
Well, and part of that is because, anytime they came close to achieving something, there was a desolation. So, thanks to Talon being, a baddie, and holding out for over 1,000 years, they've been able to actually develop stuff and learn things. It's really cool.
They've been stuck at a certain point, and now they've been able to jump.
Plus, they're able
further.
to base a lot of their research and development on stuff that the Artifabrians of old had created. And so... now, I found it interesting watching Kaladin's perspective as he sees Rashon. Like, because Kaladin is basically seeing Rashon in absolutely every worst possible light, no matter what he does. It's really interesting because it kind of shows Kaladin as not necessarily a perfectly reliable narrator, which is another writing tool that Brandon uses that I love, is the unreliable narrator, because you can learn more from somebody. Like, when somebody behaves in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect, you learn something from that. It's also a way of setting and changing expectations. And so it's really kind of a cool, just seeing Kaladin as not this perfect character. He's still very understandable why he looks at him that way. But it's really interesting to see.
It reminds me a lot of sort of the reverse of Elhokar. Because with Elhokar, we didn't see him when he was quote unquote bad, but incompetent, but we knew he was trying to improve.
Right.
Rashon, we saw him at his worst, and then found out, oh no, we didn't, because then we find out from Moash that Moash saw him at his worst.
Right.
But he is responsible for the deaths of Tien and at least Moash's grandparents. Like, that's the minimum of the pain that this man has caused. But at the same time has gone on, and he is progressing, and it looks like that he is finally learning to see. And when you have a grudge against someone, one of the most painful things to see is them learning their lesson, because then it puts it on you to let it go a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's so hard for someone to do that, because it's the same person who did that.
Destroyed your life.
And it's like, well, but they're growing. They're not technically this, in the same way. They're not technically the same person.
Yeah. If they start to become a decent person who's okay, and you're like, but you were so cemented as this horrible thing in my mind that it's hard to let go of.
Well, and you can actually kind of see the damage that does to Kaladin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you just have to look at Moash too and see the damage it does.
Well, it's the tragedy of Elhokar. It's like the reason it's a tragedy was Elhokar was just starting to figure it out. It's why what Nail was doing was so insidious. Like, Yim made some tiny mistake back in his past. And it was serious. I shouldn't say tiny. It was a serious mistake. But he had devoted his life to fixing.
He'd done so much good afterwards,
He still couldn't progress.
Particularly if you look at Dalinar. His story, his backstory in Oathbringer. I mean, Dalinar has completely changed from the Blackthorn.
Well, and you get into these conversations. If there's any justice in the world, Dalinar would be put to death for all that he has done. If there's any justice in the world. But is that net better for the world? And you get into these horrible ethical questions, the very things that Kaladin has been struggling with. That, because he starts to see all these different perspectives, and it's tearing him up inside.
I mean, you get Dalinar's line again from Oathbringer of perhaps a hypocrite is just a man in the basically on the brink of change.
Yeah.
Or in the process of growing. I don't remember the exact lines, but
same
that's
message.
the concept.
Yeah.
And so, Kaladin's looking at Rashon. He says the old blowhard looked concerned for the people under his care. Perhaps he'd been taking acting lessons with the Lightweavers. It's just like, dude, Kaladin, ease up. Again, completely understandable why he feels that way. But you can also just see it from an outside perspective. That's not going to help him. And he does sort of start to pick up on that himself towards the end of the chapter. Where he's just like, perhaps, he actually had grown, and Kaladin says, he'd probably never forgive him, but that doesn't mean that he's not trying to change.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He's not growing, at least somewhat.
He doesn't need to stay antagonistic to him. He can just tolerate him instead.
Yep.
Which is a step up.
Yeah, and so it's just these very interesting and difficult questions that. What I love about Brandon is Brandon doesn't run from the fact it's a difficult question, and that there is not a right answer. Because it's like, well, what's more important? Like, shouldn't the victims have their justice? And it's like, yeah, but also there's this complication, and there's this nuance, and if you do this, then this city might die because they still need their High Lord because he's the only one who can lead them, blah, blah, blah. And you just get all these nesting ethical questions, and in the end, it's just like, well, the problem is humanity sucks, and unfortunately, they're the ones we have to deal with.
Right.
And that's why I don't like politics.
Yeah.
We're not going there.
Anyway, so back to the fighting. Everybody's checking in on Kaladin. He's getting annoyed. All the fused want a piece of Kaladin. Which is interesting. He's basically he's made a reputation for himself.
This part of it does remind me of a lot of sports parallels, because these are very regimented fights that they do, and it's back in the day, everyone wanted to play Michael Jordan, not because they thought they might necessarily win, but because they want to test themselves. They want to see where they are. They see what the measuring stick is.
They want to see if they can win.
And so it's very interesting. But for Kaladin, it sucks because he's sitting here. It's just like, do I get a break? Do I get a break? And it's like, no, You never get a break.
Yeah. So anyway, we mentioned Kaladin, of course, going up against one of the Heavenly Ones, wounding it. And, he tells it to go. I found it interesting. Not only did it retreat, it dropped its spear. You could see it was a very meaningful gesture. Where he flew out, and you could tell something kind of changed from that point. I don't know. It was just really interesting seeing the way it looked at because something passed between them. It wasn't just
strangers in the night.
It wasn't just KAT. I'm out of here. It was
some respect there.
It was a nod and a very deliberate removing himself from the fight. Like, it's almost like they see it as just a contest. It's not, a war. Specifically, it's an actual contest. It's like honor must be held to, which is interesting because, the Windrunners, they bind themselves to honor sprint. Mm-hmm. And so seeing their counterpart, even using, Void Light and Odium, they still kind of keep to that idea of honor.
Yeah. It's almost like, because it's not quite honor with them because, it's odium, but at the same time, it's almost like the challenge, like, is what they're thinking of. And to deny that would be to be admitting it's on some level a loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's absolutely, it's a really cool addition, I feel, to these chapters that just adds a lot of depth to what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then Kaladin gets clobbered by the Nightcrawler fused.
Oh my goodness.
Freaking rogues, sneak attack.
Uh-huh.
Sneak attack.
And it was just, gosh. Those things are nasty. Like, it's just the one, but like, it was so tenacious.
Just one is bad enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, one of the other things that was interesting when in Kaladin and Leshwi's fight, how Leshwi, very tactically, she's trying to go low where she has a lot of obstacles that can get in his way and punish his higher speed by forcing him to go with more agility. Mm-hmm. She almost gets cut down by a random edge dancer that we hadn't met yet.
I'd forgot about that. Yeah,
I had forgotten that too. Yeah,
it was just
but
one of these things.
They were going around like on the streets almost. They were really low to the ground and things. I thought so.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very
and that's actually a standard tactic in. I've learned a lot about dogfighting in the past couple months. I went down a weird YouTube rabbit hole. But they talk basically. The way it goes is if you have speed, try and keep the fight in the air. And it's like, if you don't have the speed, then try and take the fight to the ground. Because there you suddenly have terrain and you can force them to do things and respond to what you're doing. And in the end, you tend to want to be higher, but if you get far enough away, their guns can't hit you. And so these tactics actually kind of match real dogfighting mixed with, the fact that they're fighting with spears.
But I mean,
Yep. It's like it's dogfighting if they had knives on the front of the planes. So
airborne knife fights.
Oh yeah. But
that's the name of my Stone Temple Pilots cover band.
That's not bad, actually.
I also love that. Okay, so after the fight's over, or not, not the fight's over.
They pause,
but,
like Kaladin pauses.
Kaladin kind of takes a breather.
Halftime.
Again, after Lynn checks on him, and he's just not cordial. Mm-mm. He's not cordial with her at all. But they find out there are prisoners in the manor house. And Rashon wants to go with them to guide them because he knows the house better than anyone. Of course, and I'm thinking Kaladin, kind of spent a lot of time in that house growing up. But okay. And Kaladin says he's trying to show, immediately assumes he's trying to show off for Dalinar. And it's just like, come on, man, just give him one.
What does Sil call him?
don't get me wrong, because again, Roshon is the worst, but still,
Yeah.
He's a stumer.
A stunner.
Stunner.
No, I think that's an M.
It's written in his, is it stummer or stunner?
Yeah, that's a stummer. Highlight it.
Okay. Then I read it wrong. Anyway, but I love that Scylla's using slang that she learned from Lift, and it's just like, oh, this is not going to end well. This is a dangerous path.
It turns out Lift is the hero that we all need.
Oh, yeah.
She's teaching swear words to Nightblood. She's teaching made-up words to Syl. It's going to be great.
It's awesome.
Yep. And then Kaladin sees Leshwi fly by, and Sigzil's chasing her, and he's like, I'm taking this. And he heads off.
That's fine. Yep.
And chapter cuts. One thing we get from a very brief, just short line, is apparently Cord now has a set of shard plate that she found in Amia, which makes me think, okay, so she was on the Dawn, or she was on the, not the Dawn Shard, what's it's called?
Ship.
Wandersail?
The Wandersail.
Yes.
She was apparently on the Wandersail with him, I'm guessing. Because that hasn't come out yet. I'm guessing that she was on the Wandersail, because that was a trip to Amia.
All I know is I
just
just like that she's taken after her father and is
got the bow.
Using the shard bow?
yeah, using the shard bow to cut down cut down problems out of the air.
Yes.
And just like just the coolness of shard bows. I still want to know how strong is Rock that he can pull one without armor.
Well, we also know that the other thing that's interesting is looking at, Rock's family, because everything is based on birth order. And I think you can't be a soldier unless you're a fourth son.
Yeah, the other sons are too important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the first is a cook or all that,
The farmer, it's like a farmer cook, and then...
Because food is a necessity no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that works with, down a matrilineal line. With...
I have never heard matrilineal, but man, that's a good word.
You've never heard
that.
matrilineal?
No, never heard that word.
Oh.
We're the English majors, Bill, remember?
Fair enough.
Yeah, it didn't ever come up when I was trying to diagram the flight path of things in the air.
But, how does that work with daughters? Is there a specific birth order for daughters?
We don't know.
Because that's the thing is, she's fighting, which I think she's his oldest, isn't she?
She might be. But, I mean, it's also possible that she just decided, I'm going to do this.
And that's the thing.
What if it turns out just being the daughter is the way to break the entire system? It's like, there are no rules. And there's like, we didn't think to write the rules. Holy crap.
There wasn't a rule forbidding that. So, yeah.
But yeah, this is another
There's
thing.
There's no rule that says a dog can't play basketball.
Oh, no. You're giving me bad flashbacks there.
No, but this is another thing that Brandon does is the trope of Ascended Extra, where you have somebody who shows up very briefly and is like, oh, that was interesting. And then later they become very, very important. And I think that's going to happen with Cord. It seems like she's been given, I mean, she's got a set of shard plate. Yeah. And so I feel like we're going to learn more about her, and she's going to become more important as this goes on. So
how old is she supposed to be again?
I'm picturing like 20, maybe 18.
Let's see. Cord.
But that's kind of just what I've got in my head. I could be completely off on that.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. At least I don't see them being as comfortable with her doing and going and doing the things that she does if she's not close to that age.
Well, and who's to say that they are comfortable at all?
Yeah, I mean, but that's what my headcanon is. But we don't
Meanwhile, the other interesting thing is over the course of this fight is we see Rock filling a support role.
Mm-hmm. He's chucking spears at him so they can...
He's chucking spears and filling it up. And it's just interesting. It's another sign that I feel like Rock is going to end up being a Stone Ward. Because it mentions that everybody, or pretty much everybody from the original Bridge 4 has bonded to Spren. I don't think Rock has yet.
Yeah.
Didn't he? I thought it said he lashed it.
Well, he's a squire.
Yeah, I was not saying he,
but
I'm just saying... I could also see him still bonding a Spren.
I don't think he has. I have a strong suspicion that Rock is going to be a Stone Ward. And so I think that he's not going to bond an honor sprint. He's going to bond whatever Stone Wards bond. I just feel like that's going to happen, particularly since I believe the next novella that we get between books 4 and 5 is Rock's story.
Ooh.
And so I suspect
that between that?
Brandon's talked about it a few times.
Okay.
He was trying to decide if Dawn Shard was going to be the book that he does now, or if it was going to be Rock's story.
I just want him to bond both and dual wield, and it'll be great.
Oh boy. But yeah.
My goal is basically to get as many characters dual wielding as I can.
Oh gosh. Anyway, so yeah, that's the chapter. We do love hearing from our listeners, so please keep sending in questions, comments, other feedback. You can ask us about the Cosmere, drop us your idea for topics that you want us to discuss during the show. While you're at it, we want to hear your feedback about how you think we're doing, as well as interesting theories that you have about what the heck is happening in the Cosmere, on Roshar, on Scadrial, in the Cosmere in general, all of it together. You can send all questions and suggestions in a brief, concise email to cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and hopefully we'll read it as part of the show. Again, particularly in the next 4 weeks, send us questions that you want us to ask Isaac. We can't promise we'll ask everything. We can't promise he'll answer anything. But he's going to be here, and we are really looking forward to having that conversation. We do also have a P.O. box if you really like sending physical letters. That is the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, P.O. Box 970063, Orem, Utah 84097. Now, outside of the podcast, we've got our own personal projects. So, Amy, why don't you lead us off? Tell us what you've been doing.
So, my Facebook is Coincidence Cosplay and Props. My Twitter is @CoincidenceCosp, because my name is too long. My Instagram is @coincidence_cosplay, and my website is www.coincidencecosplay.com. And now that I'm done saying all of the C's, I have been trying to fix up parts of my house, and I'm doing there's a month-long daily challenge that Instagram account, SheProp, is doing, and so it's doing all these different prompts, and so I'm trying to put up a daily post for that, and today's was, what is something you learned to do just for cosplay? And I did weathering for painting stuff, and so I put up a picture of my Nyrene mask where I make it look more like bone and different stuff like that, because she kind of has carapace for her face. But
you got reposted.
Yeah, and so I hope to work on finish Vin very, very soon. Yeah, that's my big goal right now, is to finish Vin.
No, I was saying you got featured and reposted on.
I did get reposted by it. It was really cool that they liked my dice. So yay. Because that was the sewing I was proud of. I was like, this isn't the hardest thing I've done, but I had I covered our guest bed with all the dice I currently have in stock, which is probably 20 some odd. So that's cool.
That's awesome. Jordan, how about you? What's going on in the Splice Stream world?
We are having the biggest amiibo tournament I have ever held in my life. It's 176 amiibo with over 50 different trainers, utilizing a partnership with someone who I'm just going to tell you, if you're interested in my amiibo content, you should go follow twitch.tv/amiibots. I'm partnering with him now, and he is got a system that basically auto runs amiibo fights using database and programming and basically black magic. We'll just go with black magic.
It's witchcraft.
And so it's running the tournament 24/7, and I come in during my stream and add my 2 cents, which is, a jaunty commentary is what I like to imagine it as. And yeah, so you can follow the tournament over there. It sort of came up out of nowhere, and so the podcast that I was going to launch myself got delayed because this huge opportunity showed up. And so now I'm trying to catch up since this cool thing got in the way.
Yeah, ever since you told me that channel existed, I kind of wanted you to partner, so I'm glad that's happening. And as for myself, when I'm not here, I've got another podcast with a friend, Dylan, and we talk about board games. It's called The Innkeeper's Table, and new episodes come out on Friday mornings. Now, the thing about this podcast is it's kind of targeted at the people who don't necessarily know a ton about board games and want to know more, it's kind of sort of meant to be a link between noobs and veterans. And it's a shorter format to make it very easily digestible. We do have an Instagram page. It's at Innkeeper's Table Podcast. We've got a direct link to the audio if you want to listen to it that way. But we've also got it on, everywhere from iTunes to Google Play to basically anywhere you can get podcasts. The most recent episode was about dexterity games, which is games like Jenga, where the physical dexterity is kind of a part of what you need in order to win. And we've got an upcoming episode that's talking about board game conventions. It's kind of an odd topic in the time since everything has been digital lately. Like a lot of these board game conventions are basically going all virtual. It's, for now. But it's also a very interesting time to talk about it for that reason. I also do have a bunch of board game reviews over at www.innkeeperstable.com, and I post about games on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All of those are at the profile at Innkeeper's Table. Now, if you do want to support the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies podcast, but you can't become a patron just yet, then we would love it if you just share the podcast with your friends. Let them know about the show. Don't forget to subscribe, to like and subscribe over on youtube.com/Cosmere Studies, as well as subscribing on whatever app you use. So before we go, any final thoughts on these 2 chapters that we discussed today?
I want to see Kaladin do more harpoon, basically fused fishing harpoons. It's going to be great.
I would be amazing to have, like, a bunch of people throwing all of the spears and then having, like, all of the windrunners just, like, whoosh, throw them all. That would be kind of crazy. Be a very fun visual.
You want to do a shotgun blast of spears.
Because it would be cool.
Fair enough.
Yeah, anyway.
The fuse, they're waiting for their nice honorable duel. They're like, all right, ready, no. Challenge. And then it's just like, no.
Nope.
So what they do is they lash each individual spear towards their enemy, but they have it in a chamber that as you rotate it, comes up, there's only one hole, and so you basically have a Gatling gun of spears. Why am I not on Team Dragonsteel?
What?
Like, this is a brilliant idea.
Bill, we're meeting Isaac in 4 weeks.
Yet. Why am I not on Team Dragonsteel yet?
This is all part of the game plan, folks. By the end, Bill will be running the place.
No, I don't want to run the place.
Brandon answers to Bill.
No. That's too far.
That'd be crazy talk. Crazy.
In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, listeners can find our videos on YouTube or audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile at Cosmere Studies. And please, if you've got questions you'd like us to ask Isaac Stewart when he's on the show in 4 weeks, make sure to send those to us and include the word Isaac in the subject line. For our next episode and the next few moving forward, with the exception of the Isaac feature, we're going to keep digging into the Rhythm of War preview chapters, so join us for the discussion in 2 weeks on September...
7.
I got the wrong number. September 23rd?
No,
21st. September 21st. So join us for the discussion in 2 weeks on September 21st at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern at www.twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table. Next time, we will be talking about chapters 6 and 7. Until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening, and remember,
there's always another
secret.